Let's talk about quickly the Four Nations final, what we're going to see tonight. But let's talk about what we could see over the next 48 hours after Four Nations. So if Team USA loses, there's a few guys that we're going to look at going, okay, were they just not clutch in this game? Austin Matthews being one of them. I think you would have to look at him. Jack Hughes hasn't really stood out in this tournament, which is kind of unfortunate. Of course, we haven't seen Quinn Hughes in here. So I wonder if some guys like an Alex Tuch or a Tage Thompson were missed for Team USA with guys like Chris Kreider on this roster. So that's another consideration. You have some more layers. I know Team USA was looking to call Clayton Keller and all that stuff. They got Tage Thompson and Brett Pesce on standby. I get all that. Jared McCann is going to be an interesting one. As I said, after Four Nations, Seattle's going to be out of a conversation for playoffs. I'm very, very curious about Seattle and the moves they're going to make, especially with their lack of representation at this tournament. They've had a lot of time to just look internally. So Jared McCann, if I had to make a hot take, I'm sure the Toronto Maple Leafs Trey Living would look at it and try to erase that massive mistake from Kyle Dubas. When I look at it beyond that, I mean, if they're trying to get him out of the conference, like Alex Tuch, for me, there's rumors like Jeff Merrick talking about the fact that Vegas has been scouting Buffalo a lot, and there's also been rumors around LA looking at Alex Tuch and those Quentin Byfield conversations. I've also seen that maybe Vegas would look at a Zach Whitecloud plus draft capital for Buffalo. I mean, Buffalo wants a right shot defenseman, but how high do they see Zach Whitecloud? So all this stuff could happen after Four Nations. I think after this Four Nation final, we're going to be so excited about this final. Canada, USA, are you kidding me? It's going to be the best of the best. But then beyond that, I think we're going to get a lot of news and trades. And I was right. I got to say, my prediction was right. I said that GMs and NHL management would treat Four Nations like a bit of a trade freeze. And a lot of people push back on me. But you know what? You look at it right now, that's exactly what's happened here. Unless we get a trade at puck drop tonight, we have not got a trade during Four Nations to a significant degree. I think there's been one or two minor trades, but in terms of those big juicy ones, when we're talking about the JT Miller trades of the world and the Mikko Randons, those were just not going to happen during Four Nations, I thought. So the fact is, you're looking at it now. You got Alex Tuch in trade rumors. He could go to LA. He could go to Vegas. There's a lot of rumors around that. You look at Jared McCann. Could he go back out east? Because I think Seattle's going to want to trade him out of conference. He's got 2 years left, as I said. After this year, $5 million cap hit. He hasn't had this scoring this year the way he's wanted. He's a former 40-goal scorer a couple seasons ago. So, I mean, if I'm looking at guys that could get a Jared McCann, I'm looking at the Tampa Bay Lightning. They have some more cap flexibility. Maybe Toronto. Trey Living wants to fix that Dubas mistake, as I said. Maybe the Florida Panthers want to reunite from the guy that they originally had, because I think they sent him from Florida to Vancouver. So there's a lot of layers there. The Seth Jones one is so interesting for me because he's trying to facilitate a trade with the team. So Seth Jones wanting out, if you cut that cap hit in half, as I said, we're talking about in the $4 million versus the $9 million. That's a massive difference for a right shot defenseman in the top four. So I think that trade could also materialize here after Four Nations. He was a guy that a couple years ago, if you asked me who's on Team USA for Four Nations or any tournament, frankly, it would have been Seth Jones. His fall off needs to be studied. So I think Seth Jones still has capability to be a top four, maybe even a top pair defenseman. He's got to be on a better team. Chicago isn't that right now. And I think Seth Jones has the opportunity to do that. Whether he leaves money off the table and restructures his contract, the NHL just doesn't do that like other leagues do. They should introduce that more. So it would have to, I just don't think he's going to terminate 3 years into a 8-year deal at that cap hit. There's just so much money owed. So maybe it's a scenario where he convinces Chicago to retain and facilitates a trade with a team where Chicago gets a lot of value. So the example with Toronto is, again, I don't want to see the Leafs move on from Fraser Minten as mentioned, but it would be Fraser Minten, the contracts of David Kampf and other guys going back, and then maybe draft capital from Toronto. That would get Seth Jones right into the top four with the likes of Chris Tanev, Jake McCabe, and Morgan Riley. That'd be stud-worthy in the top four. So another example of a guy that could have been on USA a couple of years ago and just hasn't, and it's dropped off. So, and that's, again, a bigger storyline of we've missed out on a lot of high-quality hockey internationally in the NHL, which has sucked. But it is what it is. But again, I think there's going to be massive trades for Four Nations coming up, or after Four Nations. I was right on the fact that it was a trade freeze. They, again, not officially. It wasn't officially a trade freeze, but I felt they were going to treat it as such. So that's what's happened here. And I think some of these trades are going to break over the next week and right leading into the trade deadline March 7th.